and then um, Jeff Kavanaugh and Pat Maoli. I hope I did justice to your last name.
You did great.
Great. So I'll turn it over to you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mike. Glad to have you all on board with us today. Pat and I, are going to be going over some basics and of course, throwing in a little detail concerning veteran services and how the students that come to see you that are using their GI Bill benefits might think, what kind of questions they might ask, and give you an idea of what the answers are. I want you to know these are when we go through this, and I'm sorry it's a PowerPoint. I'd much rather be up in person and talking, but and we'll make sure that this is on my courses, as Mike mentioned, so that you can refer back to it. But I also have some handouts that I will get to each campus in my travels to ensure that you've got something that you can keep at your desk and that sort of thing. These are not the all-knowing answers. There's always what-ifs. This is why Pat's with me today. She is our curriculum expert. Fortunately or unfortunately, Veteran Services is a dynamic program. It changes. It changes within itself on occasion, and also due to legislation. And a couple of those things we'll cover as we go along. One thing to remember is that every student, of course, should go through an academic advisor and speak to you at some time. I know that you guys are the key people at starting them on MLP, starting them on the career choice path, and of course getting them into the proper classes to meet their ultimate desires. We stand by to assist in passing out the benefit counseling for the Veterans Administration. And in doing so, we try to assist to ensure that certain particulars or nuances that affect a veteran's overall benefit package, especially their educational package, and you can read money there, to ensure that they can get the full amount that is entitled to them. So I am going to head for slide 2 here and start with enrollment certification. This is something that comes up maybe not first, but at some time during the certification process. The student wants to know when the enrollment certification will be sent to the VA, and they are transmitted to the VA in the order that they are received after we review the classes and it's been approved to send. And what we mean by that, and you'll see more of this, is some classes are not approved for GI Bill payment. Some courses are not approved for GI Bill payment, but suffice to say that currently everything that's in our current catalog is. If there's any questions, we can certainly find out. Classes outside of, I'll give you some examples, classes outside of a major are not approved for GI Bill payment unless they're going to fill up the, what am I thinking?
The general education courses.
Yeah, the electives.
Or the electives, right. If they're in an AA and they have room for electives.
Correct. If they have room for electives, those can always be paid for if they're elective. But if they're in an AS degree and they're in a highly technological AS degree and they want to take scuba diving, the VA will say no to that. So that's what we mean after it's been reviewed and approved. I'm going to go on to slide 3. What happens if a student drops or adds a class? Well, a lot. Each time a student changes his schedule, another schedule verification survey that are available in our website needs to be submitted, and those go directly to our processing department in Clearwater. At the same time, the student needs to discuss with a veteran services advisor how this may affect his or her VA benefits. Because it can, just swapping 3 hours for 3 hours sounds simple, but if the class that it's been swapped for is not approved, if it's outside the educational plan, if it's online, if it's express, there's a lot of things that could affect it. And we would need to talk to them, and they should be advised, please come see us to see how it would affect them. And this is one of those dynamics that does change. So I hesitate to give you all the details. Please ask questions, of course, but this can change throughout the school year. Let's see, we're going to head on to slide 4. Receiving VA educational benefits. When will I start receiving VA educational benefits? In other words, the basic allowance for housing, stipend, my book stipend, and for that matter, do we also include when is my classes paid for, or does that come up later?
That comes later,
Okay.
I think.
Okay, well, right now we'll just talk about basic allowance for housing stipend and book stipend. After the certification has been processed by the VA, it is sent to the U.S. Treasury, and the Treasury cuts a check and starts the basic allowance for housing. If the student is 100% qualified or is a 100% eligible GI Bill recipient, in this area they receive approximately $1,800 a month. And the book stipend is based on the number of credit hours, up to $1,000 per academic year. In other words, it'll pay for books for fall, spring, and summer. Unfortunately, the book stipend comes late. It comes after the processing and generally isn't received until the second month of payments. That's not a good thing. It's something that legislation is trying to address. It's something I've tried to address with the bookstore in the area of book line of credit, but with no success so far. So they have to think in advance and know that they're going to have to get those books. If there is difficulty and a student comes to see you because they have attached themselves to you as the giver of knowledge, we can help them. There's various things we can do to assist. We can even contact instructors for them and ask to have the early chapters maybe printed, or there are things that just suffice. Send them to us. We can help them. Go ahead.
We also have donated books in most of our Veterans Resource Centers, so they can come in and see. We might have a book that's one edition older than they need, but they could always use it. So we have books available.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Pat. The BAH, the Basic Allowance for Housing, is paid around the first of the month. And we tell our students, if you don't see it, come see us, as there can be all kinds of things affecting that. The book stipend and the BAH are directly deposited into the account as designated by the veteran student. If they want it directly into their checking account, their savings account, or if they
Sometimes they even get a check from the VA,
yeah,
but not that often.
right. That's on a rare occasion, and they would prefer not to.
Right.
So generally, we're going to work them toward a direct deposit. The tuition, and the VA will pay for the in-state portion of the tuition only, is dispersed to the college after we certify a second time. Now, let me make that clear. This is just something that I always like everyone to understand. The certification process is not a simple stamp and we're all done. We attempt to certify the student as soon after they've enrolled and chosen classes as possible, and we encourage that. If we certify them at that time, so that they can start the BAH, the basic allowance for housing, and we can get the VA to start sending checks to them as soon as possible. However, we don't place in to that initial certification the amounts and the courses that they will be taking, the amount, the cost for each course.
Tuition and fees.
Yeah, tuition and fees. We do this for a reason, because we know the students are going to change, and they've got up and through that first week of drop add to make any course corrections, so to speak. The record for one student making changes was 126, and you can easily see that if we had certified in all of their classes and amounts, the check, with all those changes going on, it would have overpowered the VA, and the back and forth movement between the Treasury and the college would have basically, it will create some sort of error in the amount being paid. And once there is an error, it becomes
Debt management.
yeah, it falls under what's known as debt management. And they are bulldogs, and they work very linear. So they will require that each step or each problem area, each overpayment or underpayment is handled before the next one is handled. So there's a lot of back and forth movement of money. So we certify again right after drop add, and add the tuition and fees.
Jeff, we had
Yeah.
one question from Angel,
Go ahead.
their group, and it was, can the BAH and book payment go on the one card?
No, it usually
No.
goes directly to their checking account or their bank account that the student sets up with the VA. So that's usually done before.
Well, here's why. It can't go on the one card, because the one card is handled by the college
School.
itself, the school. And for example, when the college is paid, they are paid by EFT, electronic funds transfer, in a big lump sum. And we get a bunch of lump sums. And then some poor individual in the business department has to take that EFT and separate out each student payment and place it on their account. So in the same respect, if they were paying to go on their one account, they would have to pay the school, and then the school would have to deal with it, and it just wouldn't work.
But if there's an overpayment, if a student, let's say, gets federal financial aid, and that usually kicks in first, so their Pell Grant pays for all or part of their tuition and fees, then the VA funds come in and pay. That overage does go back to the higher one card, if that's how they have it set up.
Is that on here?
Yes, I think we cover that later on.
Yeah, we'll be coming up to that, and we'll give a
I
little
think
more
we do.
details on that. Did that answer the question?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
We got a yes from them.
Okay, and if there's any nuances, or it doesn't completely cover it, Pat and I are available anytime to try to answer that question, and we will refer to this often during this training session. We are going to be also presenting at All College Day. So if anything you missed, or you want to ask a question more face to face, come see us during the All College Day presentation. Okay. Let's hit
Great.
this.
Thanks.
No problem. Now, students often ask how many months of entitlement are remaining. So let's describe what that is. In a nutshell, if a military member spends more than 1 day on active duty, not active duty for training, but active duty, they will qualify for the GI Bill. If they spend 3 years or more on active duty, they qualify for 100% eligibility. Anything less, and they qualify for a percentage. That percentage could be 10% or 20 or 30 or 50 or so on. That percentage is presented to them after they apply on the Veterans Online application link with the VA. They receive a certificate of eligibility that says you're 100% eligible or you're 50% eligible or whatever. And it means exactly that. That 50%, if you're 50% eligible, you're eligible for 50% of everything that's offered. That would be basic allowance for housing, payment to the school, payment for book stipend. It's 50% of whatever the total is. So entitlement is the number of months that a student has to use their GI Bill. Now, this is not a linear thing. It doesn't mean they have to use all 36 months the minute they start. This can be spread out over years to finish their degree, their associate degree, their baccalaureate degree, and it can be even saved from and applied to a master's program. But it's something that the GI Bill recipients, the student veterans, will start to think more of after they've been in college for about 2 years. And they want to know how much time is left. There is a phone number at the VA. They're encouraged to call direct. And we encourage them to apply for e-benefits that is a portal on the va.gov website that they can register on, and it gives them all kinds of information. So again, how many months do I have remaining? I don't know, but you can find out. You can send them to us. They can use our computers. We can walk them through how to find out. Transcripts on hold. If a student has a transcript on hold from a prior school, will that impact VA certification? Well, yeah, just like any student. Did you want to address this?
Yeah, well, if we don't have, well, now we require all transcripts to be in, from what I understand. So it's the same for a veteran student. If we don't have all the transcripts on file, the VA will let us certify them to the end of the second semester, and then they're no longer eligible for certification until all their transcripts are received. And the problem they run into also is what it says here on the slide. If the student repeats or takes a class, maybe they weren't aware, maybe our class had a different number, or they weren't aware they'd taken a class, then their transcript comes in, they're going to be responsible for repaying that debt back to the VA.
In a nutshell, let me give you an example. Student goes to Valencia College in Orlando, runs into some trouble, maybe leaves owing the college some money, and not in a happy way. They apply at St. Pete College, and they won't release the transcript. Their transcript's on hold at the other school. Just like the college, the VA wants to make sure that all the transcripts are in. However, they give us the opportunity to certify a student without that transcript for 2 semesters. And the idea here is so that they can start drawing BAH and pay the other school back. Literally, that's the reasoning behind that. Now, oops. Okay. I'm kind of holding on this one just in case anybody has questions. Actually, I'm getting a text question. So hold on just a second while I look at this and see if I can be a little more clear. Okay, earlier I mentioned about the school being paid after we certify the student. Only the post 9/11 GI Bill, Chapter 33 and Chapter 31s receive payment to the school. Chapter 30 and others, they get a stipend based on the rate of pursuit, and Chapter 30s are fully entitled. They're all considered fully entitled. So again,
Then it's up to them to pay the school
right, and it's
or
up,
their tuition
right,
and fees.
and it's up to a Chapter 30 recipient to pay the school. And Chapter 30 recipients are the old Montgomery GI Bill, or individuals that came in prior to the post 9/11 GI Bill and are still in or are retiring. Probably 70% of our students now are post 9/11 GI Bill Chapter 33. This part can be a little confusing. Again, contact us if the student has questions along those lines. Okay. Any questions so far, Mike, up through that point?
I saw that one on the chapter 33 and 31. Are there any more questions out there about what Jeff and Pat have covered so far? No, I guess not. So maybe we can just continue on until we gather some more questions.
Okay. Some things to remember when working with students receiving VA educational benefits. Okay, remedial classes, and we're all familiar with those. A remedial class must be fully face-to-face. Will only be covered by the VA if the student is not flexible placement. Let me give you the reasoning behind this, and this is legislated to us. This is not something that we have a waiver authority over. Couple of things. A blended class is looked at by the VA as an online class. It's an internet class. We can call it anything we want, but the VA is onto it, and they consider it an online class. The government, the Department of Defense, along with the VA, do not feel that it is appropriate to apply remedial classes online. They feel if one of their students needs a remedial class, it needs to be taught face-to-face, which is the way the military teaches their classes. So this is non-waiverable. If a student is flex placement, if a student is flex placement, in essence, they are being told that the class is not required. That's the key. That's the key wording here. If a class is not required, the VA will not pay for a non-required class. So it will not be covered.
If
Go
a
ahead, Pat.
student feels that they need the remedial class, we always tell them to apply for FAFSA, and we get into that a little bit, I think, in another couple of slides. They need to apply for federal financial aid. They just have to remember that if their Pell Grant pays for the class, fine, but we still cannot count that towards their base allowance for housing, so it doesn't count towards their schedule being 12 credit hours or full-time.
And are there questions? I mean, in terms, I know the college has the new Smart Start and things like that going. So I'm guessing
Well, Smart Start isn't charged.
Right.
So, we don't have to worry about slipping that in there. But if they ever start charging for Smart Start or something that they've invented, then we will have to go out to the approving authority within the VA to ask them to cover the class. And quite honestly, something like Smart Start will be turned down.
Right.
It basically to add a class in to our curriculum or our catalog, it has to show a benefit toward receiving a degree, a certificate, the education, the background in order to get a job, and not just learn your way around the college.
Right.
Federal financial aid. Students receiving VA benefits can also receive federal financial aid. Absolutely have the student do a FAFSA. Now, probably everybody knows this, but unfortunately we have students show up every semester that were told by their senior chief petty officer or their top sergeant that there's absolutely no way that they can double dip and receive two forms of federal aid, so don't even think about applying for other forms of federal aid. FAFSA is a standalone grant, and they've earned their GI Bill. So in essence, they've earned both.
And they can also apply for scholarships too.
Scholarships and, of course, loans,
Right.
the whole nine yards. They can get themselves into debt just as fast as anyone else. And we'd love to talk to them about that, to try to keep them from getting in trouble.
Now, there are a couple more questions, if
Shoot.
this is
Cool.
okay.
That's what we're looking for.
One from Mary Ortiz is, will you explain the difference when using a Chapter 31 post 9/11 bill that only pays the in-state tuition fees, and if the VA student is not a resident of Florida, then they need to fill out Congressman C.W. Bill Young Veterans Tuition Waiver?
Very good, Mary. Thank you very much. Excellent, excellent, excellent. In a nutshell, the VA is traditionally only paid for the in-state rate. They cannot pay the out-of-state rates. This has caused problems throughout the 50 states and territories, in that students don't always go back to their home of record or their home state, or where they've established residency. And yet they've served the country, the United States, and they should be allowed to use their GI Bill benefit anywhere. Well, over the years, we have managed to fight through some legislation, both at the federal and the state level, that allows a GI Bill recipient to basically receive a waiver regarding that portion that would be considered out of state if they cannot immediately establish state residency. This waiver is available to all honorably discharged veterans. So in essence, they just have to present a DD 214 with the term honorable discharge on it. And if it doesn't, we're also well versed at reading the codes, so we'd be happy to look at any DD 214. And they have to show that they're living in the state. They have to give some sort of proof that they reside here, not a resident, but they're living in the state. With those documents and there's a form that Mary's office provides us, they can apply for what's known as the C.W. Bill Young Act state residency waiver. This past summer, spouses and dependents were also included in the waiver, which had been an oversight on the state's part. So now all eligible chapters of the GI Bill are covered by the Florida State C.W. Bill Young Residency Waiver Act. If there are any questions, again, the student can see us, and the folks that actually adjudicate this program and report to the state are the registrar's office, and that is Mary Ortiz and Ava Christensen. And
they can start the process through their
Go ahead.
business
Thank
office
you.
on campus too. A veteran student would need to bring in their DD 214. They can get this C.W. Bill Young waiver form from most business offices on campus. They also have to do a residency affidavit, so they're not proving they haven't been here 12 consecutive months in Florida, so they can't prove residency, but they can prove that they've set up residency by getting a copy of their lease, or hopefully maybe they have a driver's license, or they've registered their car or applied to vote. So something to prove that they reside here.
Yeah, we just need something that shows that they live here in the state. But this helps the state and the student start to prepare for residency. And we've worked closely with the registrar's office again to reach out to those students every semester. Every semester, Mary sends out an email to those students that are using the waiver. The waiver, by the way, has to be applied for every semester. It's not just a one-time thing. It has to be applied for every semester. And Mary sends out an email to those students that are using it to remind them that they have to reapply and remind them that they may be eligible for residency. And it might behoove them to go ahead and apply and finish the paperwork. Just to cover again, spouses and dependents are covered. It's any chapter of the GI Bill, not just Chapter 33 post 9/11, and it's any veteran. So, and they can take their paperwork straight to the business office and pick it up there, run into problems, get the information to one of our Veteran Services Student Support Advisors, and we will work with that student. There's always going to be a what if.
I think we got one of those what if questions.
Cool.
It was from Angel, and it was, what if they're a homeless veteran?
Yep, we can work with a homeless veteran. There is basically a legal statement that they make saying where they are receiving care, benefits, temporary housing, etc. If you have a homeless veteran, we'd like to talk to them because that opens other doors. We have the ability to get those veterans taken care of through HEP, the Housing Emergency Project, through other contacts that we have, homeless advocates, through the Pinellas County Housing Authority. In other words, that's actually, get them to us right away. We can do a lot more for them than just take care of their residency situation.
Those are great answers, and we appreciate your flexibility on the questions coming in. There were a couple more that related to things that were allowable, and it falls under the idea of these kind of non-traditional programs. EMT, for example, prove that they're at a college level if they're in an EMT program or a fire and police academy.
Okay, hold that thought just for a minute. I want to add
Sure.
one more thing,
Okay,
since we were
great.
talking to homeless, that if the veteran student is homeless, I just want to remind everybody, we also offer a homeless waiver at the college, so they don't even have to use their GI Bill benefit. They could, in essence, save their GI Bill benefit for a later date and use the homeless waiver. So again, all the more reason to get them, into us so we can talk to them. Now, back to the question you just asked.
Sure.
I'm not following it.
Well, I think that it's proving that it's an equivalent level as other college programs for EMT program, because it's more workforce driven as opposed to academic, classic academic type courses.
Well, are you saying, are you talking, our EMT program, our fire and police academy are all covered by the GI Bill. Yes?
And I think that's what they're looking for.
Okay. And we can easily certify them.
Right.
Jeff, this is Tammy. I'll expound on my question.
Thanks, Tammy.
Sure. If a student comes in here for any health program, they are required to prove for admissions into a health program that they are at college level. So oftentimes students may come in at college level writing and reading, but not math. And so they have to take a preparatory class, developmental class for math before they are eligible to apply for EMT. So when you were talking about the developmental not being covered, it is required for them to show that they are at that level. So it is a requirement.
Let me back up on that. The VA will have no trouble paying any developmental class unless the student is coded flexible placement.
But
They will not waiver.
Flexible placement is just a recommended placement?
No, it's a state legislative.
I understand that, but if they are coded as needing developmental in flex placement,
The VA will not pay.
The VA will not pay.
Okay.
They have already reviewed and said, we won't pay. So the student's going to have to pay for that. It's simple as that. I don't agree with it.
Out-of-pocket financial aid. We tell them to do the math readiness, the MOOCs, see the math department. They sometimes can help.
It boils down to this. If the state of Florida says that they are not required to take it, the school, according to the VA, does not have the authority to override the state's ruling. So I understand what you're saying. I disagree with it. I disagree with flexible placement. Quite honestly, I disagree with a group of legislators deciding, who's smart and who's not. But there's nothing I can do about that one.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Sometimes I can't answer them all happily.
Well, I was just checking to see if there was any kind of statement that could be made on behalf of the student that although it's not part of their required program, it is required to show that they
And I
are
agree
at
with you
that
wholeheartedly.
level. Okay.
It should happen. Tammy,
Okay.
you're absolutely correct. And,
Okay.
But get them to us. Get them to us. We'll discuss other options.
Okay,
We'll go into
thank you.
detail on those other options, but we'll do our best
Okay,
to help
thanks.
in some way. But thanks
Thank
for
you.
bringing that up because
Sure
I
thing.
know
Thanks,
that affects
Tammy.
you guys.
It's awful.
Thanks, Jeff. And there was
Yep.
another one about SLS 1101, but I'm thinking this falls under the same discussion in terms of flex.
SLS is okay.
Yeah.
They will pay for
Okay.
it.
If a student's in an AA, and it'll fall in as an elective, that's fine.
Yeah, this was based on veterans who don't qualify for flex placement, test into developmental, and are therefore required to take SLS 1101. So, since it's not listed as part of the curriculum, but
No, but SLS
If
is
it
covered.
falls into
okay,
the
great.
elective
They're
as
okay
an
there.
AA, they can take it.
Yep.
And then the post part of the question was, what if they're not in an associate in an AA program?
If they're not in an AA, and their flex placement,
And we can table some of these too if we need to
yeah,
think
I'm gonna
about
have to
it.
get back to you on that one. I
Okay.
don't think, no, because they're not gonna, we're gonna have to look into that. No, I don't think they'll pay for it.
No, wait, I missed that. Are we
If they're
still
in an
talking
AS
SLS?
degree, somebody said if they're not in an AA degree.
I feel pretty confident saying SLS is approved and it'll be paid for regardless. But if there's any concern, we can verify that.
Okay, great.
Okay, they must be degree seeking, or in a authorized certificate program or applied technology diploma. The VA will not pay if the student does not fit one of those categories.
Or bachelor's.
Okay, or yeah, of course, or a baccalaureate program. The academies are most certainly covered by the VA.
Okay, great.
Any questions there? Again, what they don't to understand where the VA is at this point in their development of the GI Bill, they no longer trust or they are looking for more oversight as to how the government's money is being spent. So they spend more time reviewing and auditing what students are taking. There's two reasons for this. One, the Montgomery era GI Bill, by the end of Vietnam, students were taking the money and they were using it to buy pizza, beer, and motorcycles, and not completing college. But what they're doing today is they're keeping control of how the school is paid, so we don't have students defaulting to schools, and they're paying the student directly, and it's tied to what they take. We basically become the government's oversight arm on this for them. This is why they must be degree seeking, or in an approved certificate or in an approved applied technology diploma. It's pretty simple, but if a new curriculum comes along, a new course, a new whatever, we can always apply through the state and federal approving agencies to have it added to the list of those that are approved for GI Bill payment. One other little nuance I'll throw in is the for-profit colleges really brought this to light when they were giving arbitrary credit for on-the-job training and their high cost of tuition and some basically made-up classes. We'll just leave it at that. So this has received a lot of attention.
Great. We really appreciate that, the details on that. Thanks, Jeff.
Oh yeah, we can tell all kinds of blood-curdling stories, but it is true. College is a great money-making matter throughout the U.S. right now, and I'll give you one example. The University of Phoenix, and this is with apologies to anyone that has a University of Phoenix degree. On the positive side, they've done a wonderful job of bringing the online class to the front. I think online classes are a wonderful way for a student to get an education, and it needed to happen. They definitely served a purpose there. But for just one example, our entire marketing budget for St. Petersburg College is about $300,000. The entire marketing budget for the University of Phoenix is $300 million. And they didn't get that money through a grant. They're getting that from the students themselves. So this is why the government wants to make sure that they're not just growing a college or an industry, and they're ensuring that students are receiving education. So, are there more questions?
Well, there was just one more from Berta, and it's there are certificate programs that SPC offers that are not covered by the VA, and the example was like the non-FA certs.
The non-what?
FA.
FA?
Berta's out there.
Non-financial aid eligible certs, is that?
Maybe. It's a term I'm not familiar with. Of course, I'm not an advisor.
Everything in our college catalog has been approved.
Yeah, everything in our college catalog has been approved. Our college catalog is submitted in its entirety. It's reviewed and is approved.
And it said non-financial aid certs or certificates, I guess as well.
There are some certificates that we offer that are not approved. We know what they are, and we'll be glad to help with those. They're, wedding planner is not approved.
Continuing ed, corporate training, those type of things. What's the other one? Link, supply chain, that.
Some of these newer ones, Link, supply chain management. Has not been formally approved. What's the machine? The manufacturing certificates have not been approved.
Right, that's great information.
So there are some, but many of the corporate training programs are approved. There's because they fall under our catalog and run with them. Again, when in doubt, ask us. If we don't know, we'll find out.
Yeah,
there's just too many to keep on tap.
Right.
I had to really stretch just to get to the wedding planner part.
Right.
I want to say one other thing that just came to mind when we were talking about SLS. I just wanted to again point out that SLS is a college experience class and part of our catalog, and it's not a developmental class. So this is why it falls outside that realm of developmental. Okay, that's just the way to look at it.
Great.
I'm sorry. Any more questions?
I don't see any at the moment, so we really appreciate.
I do have a question, Mike.
Okay.
I had posted whether or not benefits cover, like if they're going through the academy, like a police or fire academy.
Right.
at the same time they're completing an AS degree.
Oh,
Are both
okay.
of those programs covered at the same time?
You're going to have to give me an example. What veteran student do you have that's doing that?
Not any that come to mind or anything, but just in case we had the scenario that popped up,
Well,
possibly in the
a
future.
veteran
If you have a
student can only tackle one degree at a time. They
Okay.
cannot.
I'm just putting you in that scenario if that happened,
Well,
perhaps.
I mean, off the top of my head, the answer is no.
Okay.
That
Thank you for the
cannot happen.
clarification.
They
One degree at a time.
yeah, it's basically, just simply put, it's one degree at a time.
Thank you.
They don't allow dual majors, dual degrees, that sort of thing.
Thank you.
The academies are the clock hours, and then if they're taking other courses, yeah, that I don't think they would allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
The housing benefit, basic allowance for housing. Again, when in doubt, or when a student has questions like this, it's preferable if you send them to us. But in a nutshell, one of the biggest difficulties we have is the all online student, and we have a lot of them like that. For a student to receive the full basic allowance for housing benefit, and when I say full, that's the full that they're eligible for. Remember, I'm going back to, if they're 100%, they get the full $1,800. If they're a 50%er, they spend a year and 2 days on active duty, they would get approximately $900. And these are for the Chapter 33 and Chapter 31 GI Bill recipients. In order for them to qualify for that basic allowance for housing, that full amount, one class per enrollment period is required to meet face-to-face. And let me say again, it can be any class that's eligible for their degree, and it can meet for 1 hour, for that matter. But one class needs to be face-to-face. The reason for this, and I love giving the reasonings, is we're hoping this kind of legislation will change, but their thought process is, by having a face-to-face class, it ensures that the student is living in the area. What they don't want to happen is they don't want to have a student living here in St. Petersburg and attending college at Georgetown in Washington, D.C., where the BAH rate is approximately $3,000 a month. So, again, they're just tightening up the way they use oversight. An example we used here is a blended class that is at 3 credit hours. In other words, if you throw in a blended class to meet that requirement, remember they first look at it as an online class, but if it meets 50 minutes per credit hour that it's using, then it can be considered face-to-face. I really don't know of many that really fall that way, but I guess
there are some.
But there are a few. But there's some pending legislation that would change the online payment of BAH. Right now, if you are taking full-time, 12 hours, all online, you are paid at 1/2 the national average of basic allowance for housing, which is just a little more than $600
No,
a
it's
month.
700 and something.
Okay, it's up
Yeah,
to 700.
it's-
So it's a little more than $700 a month. If this legislation passed, they would strictly get the average, which would be a little more than $1,400 a month, which is more in keeping with what it should be. Submitting forms. The forms that veteran students submit must be submitted every semester that they are using veterans benefits at St. Pete College. And these include the schedule verification I mentioned, the 60-day deferment, the CW Bill Young waiver. I think we
have them on the next
we have some on here.
slide. There it is.
There we go. The
There's
veteran
the
schedule verification, the 60-day deferment, the veterans waiver of out-of-state fees. And again, I'm not going to just read this or actually click on the links, but this is where you find them, and this will be online for you to get. Last but not least, our St. Petersburg College Veterans Services Campus Contacts. In Tarpon Springs, our center is in the AG building, the Agora building, which is also Student Life and Leadership. Pat Mayoli is our student support advisor on the campus. We all have extracurricular activities that we do, and she is our curriculum expert. So a lot of the questions that you've asked today concerning developmental, concerning classes at HEC, concerning clock hours, Pat is our resident expert on that. The Seminole Veteran Services location is manned by Allison Shanofsky, and is in the portable 601 on the Seminole campus. At the Gibbs campus, David Lee is the student support advisor for us there, and they are located in SA 125, which is also where Student Support Services is located, over in that neck of the woods. On the Clearwater campus, Larry Hobbs is the Veteran Services Student Support Advisor, and he is located in SS 102, right down the hall from the Disabilities Resources offices. The key thing to know about these is, if you look, I'm going to go back one slide. If you look at the slide, we're open daily, Monday through Friday, but down in this area, can you guys see, Mike, can they see me pointing?
Maybe, but
Okay,
you can
not sure.
elaborate that.
Okay.
That
Well,
you
under
tell them
the
what you're pointing at. So.
Okay, under the bold area, for example, under Tarpon Springs Veteran Service hours, Monday, you see the bold area, they're open until 7 o'clock. Seminole is open until 7 o'clock on Tuesday. Gibbs is open until 7 o'clock on Wednesday. And Clearwater is open until 7 o'clock on Thursday. If we have changes in this, in these hours, we will post them for you and get them to the managers so that they can put the word out. This is so that if you're on that late shift, you can get a hold of a Veteran Services Student Support Advisor at one of the campuses to try to answer those questions for you. And we will get back to you. Pat, anything you want to
We
add on
also have at our locations VA work study students who are trained, and they can answer some of the more basic questions or get a hold of us.
Any other questions?
There was one about a general email for online students. Is there a front door like the help desk has or anything, or is it just best to email the person for their campus, respective campus?
Yeah, I know what they're asking. We do not. I just unfortunately just don't have the manpower to catch that. But although it's a nice thought, and yeah, they're going to need to email someone on one of the campuses.
Okay. Yeah. Great. And then any other general comments? I know that you've got the expanded hours there in bold on the different days of the week for the different campuses. So I know that was nice for us to see. And I know we talked about different programs and certificates. So I think that was a really good amount of information and specific questions related to that. And we talked a little bit about the fact that you're going to be speaking again at All College Day. And what will you be covering there? Is it similar to this information, or is there something new for them to look forward to?
Yep, I'll have some. There's many more stories to tell, and we can drill down a little more on the what ifs, because those are the ones that drive any advisor,
right?
Any of us in counseling crazy. There's always going to be what if I'm disabled and I'm homeless, but I'm receiving federal funding from another source? Yeah, again, we'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, that's great. I know I learned quite a bit about the homeless part there, and that there are other options for them. And I think, as an institution, it's great for us to know that opens other doors for
Well,
them.
yeah, and I didn't even mention that we have what's known as a Purple Heart waiver, which is any veteran who received the Purple Heart or higher award in precedent. Um, they are also eligible for a tuition waiver through the state of Florida. And again, I have the list of precedent at hand. So, if a student comes in and says, I received the Silver Star, for example, that would qualify. And and they could use that waiver and hold their GI Bill benefits in reserves. We have the Fry Scholarship for dependents. I haven't even touched on the matter of active duty personnel and how they fit into the mix and how they are paid. And those are things that I'll bring to bear at All College Day. Are the resources that we have at hand. Our centers themselves are our greatest resources. Our people are our greatest resources. As Pat mentioned, our veteran services student assistants are marvelous because they can connect quickly with an incoming student. We have a veterans, a student resource handbook that we can get out to you. It's the Veteran and Military Student Life Resource Directory. It's online. It's in our website if you need to refer to it. It's got tons of information that will help a student, and not just at school, but just taking care of life issues. The vet centers. We have a Clearwater Vet Center. We have a St. Pete Vet Center that's near St. Pete Gibbs.
And in Pasco County.
And we have a Pasco County Vet Center. And vet centers are like, to put it easily, it's like VA light. You don't have to make an appointment. You don't have to go down to Bay Pines or over to Tampa. You can walk into a vet center, which are in, small, mini malls, so to speak. And it's a comfortable area where they can get advice, assistance immediately in a non-clinical environment. SharePoint. We have our own site on SharePoint under services, veteran services. We have a myriad of information there. Click on it, and there's a lot to learn. Our website itself, all of the forms that we use are on the website. We have a quick how to apply for veterans benefits step by step that a student can just start at the beginning and work their way through. And of course, All College Day, we will be there putting more information out. And I have a session I have two sessions with two gentlemen from the Vet Center in Clearwater, Randy Swallows, who is their outreach counselor and a combat wounded veteran himself, and Matt, their boss, the fellow that runs the show, and they'll be there to talk about how they can help and how they can assist. They come to bear, especially in cases of post-traumatic stress, and again, knowing that they exist, knowing how we can get students to them is half the battle. And we can facilitate that for anyone at any time.
Now, I know you mentioned that there were sessions for All College Day, and so do you remember what sessions? I don't have the schedule right in front of me, but I know you were presenting at least 4 sessions, right?
I think I'm with Randy and Matt at session 1 and 5. I'm talking off the top of my head here.
Okay.
And I think we're doing the advising session. I think it's session 3. That's
all right.
3 or 4.
It's either 3 or 4, something
Great.
like that.
And I know you mentioned, or maybe Pat mentioned, that there's some, since there may be a delay in them receiving a textbook, that there may be some resources that you have that could help them? I guess, is that through the campus centers? They would make their campus contact to see?
Yes.
Yeah, at the campus centers, what we ask our students to do is turn in their textbooks to us at the end of the semester if they're not using them. We also get textbooks donated to us by the bookstore. Again, our biggest problem is they might not be the latest edition, but they can start the ball rolling until that stipend gets here. We also have other sources where we might be able to provide some form of resource, whether in the form of a line of credit type thing at the bookstore in some extreme cases, to possible other locations for books. In other words, let us loose with it, and we'll see what we can do.
That's really great information, and thanks for all the extra details. Are there any more questions out there for Jeff and Pat? And I know some of them that we talked about may be situation specific, so we may not be able to handle all of those. But on what was covered, are there any questions?
While we're waiting, in case anybody's got something, let me just also mention that those resource centers on campus are not just an office with someone in it. It's an actual lounge. We have coffee, snacks, water. It's a quiet area to study. We have computers available for resource and for study, and we have printers, and the veteran students can use them at no charge, of course. And they're manned pretty much, 8 to 10 hours a day, and it's a good place for them to kind of, step in for some assistance or just some relaxation.
That's great information, and I know we were just waiting to see if anybody else had any additional questions out there. And again, we'd like to thank Jeff Cavanaugh and Pat Maioli for their great information they've provided so far today on veteran services and specifics for veterans relating to their benefits. So thanks a lot. And is there anything else you'd like to add, Pat or Jeff?
See you at All College Day.
Yeah.
That sounds great. And I guess there's no more questions. I haven't seen any through the text feed, so if there are, let us know real quick. Otherwise, I think we'll.
Or anytime. You can catch us afterwards.
Yeah.
I've got a question. This is Joe at Seminole.
Okay.
Hey, Joe.
Hi, Joe.
Are these going to be available on my courses? Is this particular
Yes.
session?
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, thank you.
Absolutely.
We're recording it, and it'll take us a little bit to put it up there, but it'll be up there today. So.
All right, thank you.
Sure. And I guess Pat and Jeff, I was going to put the slides up there, and then if there's anything else you'd like for me to put up there, I'll be happy to. So.
Fantastic.
Thank you, Mike.
We'll
Sure.
put the slides up, and we'll add some stuff to it and get it to you, Mike. Thanks again.
Great. Thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate your participation, the great questions, and of course, Jeff and Pat's time and expertise in these areas. Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend.
All right. Take care, everybody.
Guys, good job.
Great. Thanks, everyone.